Uses and abuses of intraoperative electrodiagnostic monitoring. The objectives are to understand the indications and various modalities of intraoperative monitoring, utilities through prevention of complications, and early detection of the alerts, and thereby surgical complication can be avoided if alert is not ignored. Then pitfalls and also abuse of IOM. Indications start from peripheral nerve to orthopedic surgery, spine surgery, CV junction problems, posterior fossa lesions, brain tumor or other lesions, endovascular, cardiac, cerebrovascular or other cardiovascular, parotid, thyroid, parathyroid, neck, tumors, cochlear implant, and even to the point for sleep apnea treatment, the hypoglossal nerve stimulation. All modalities which are normally done for electrophysiology can be done here. To name them SSCP, MAP, EEG, EMG, train of four, brainstem auditory evoked response, visual evoked response, phase reversal study, direct cortical stimulation with motor mapping, subcortical motor mapping, language mapping, water test, floor of fourth ventricle mapping, and then dorsal column mapping also. Nerve action potential can also be done, and specific situations like blink response or lateral spread response can be tested very easily. I started a case one that where we did EEG and SSCP for left carotid endarterectomy for high degree stenosis in a 75-year-old male. We see that baseline somatosensory work potentials on the left median, right median, and both posterior tibial nerves are completely normal. However, 8-channel EEG showed significant burst suppression. Anesthesia was informed. They lowered the depth of anesthesia. Consequently, EEG became continuous and symmetric, as also SCCP became much more reliable and reproducible. This is a DSA. Now, then after the clamp is on, we time and give information to the surgeon every 1, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 minutes. And throughout the period, the clamps were on, the data were completely stable. Now, after unclamping, also we keep on monitoring, and then again, we see that all the data, including SSCP and EEG, are completely normal. So this is a case where communication was the main key to the success, and there was no problem in the case, no data changes. Case two is where we did a anterior cervical discectomy and fusion at C5 Q1 level, and the patient had minimal symptoms. The baseline somatosensory work potential for the ulnar, left, right, and the PTNs are normal. MAP all are present, except the TA were absent since baseline, and EMG was pretty quiet, including the vocal cord. There was minimal right deltoid activity because of shoulder stretch due to positioning. And following decompression, we see the very significant improvement of the MAP, this being baseline. This is the more recent record. So there is significant improvement of the MAP following the decompression. That is very well known. Now, after the surgeon put the cage, we find SCCP were completely normal, but those improvement of MAP are gone from left APB downwards. Surgeon was told about it, and he was very cooperative. He changed the cage from the bigger size to smaller size, and that helped the MAP recovery with the excellent MAP activity back to that improved baseline. And at the end, the closer also MAP remained stable, as also the SCCP. The EMG was quiet. Again, this case also teaches us that teamwork is very important in IOM, and if the surgeon follows the proper alerts given by the IOM team, the prognosis is good. Patient did not have any weakness or any neurodeficit in follow-up. Case 3, where we did a 66-year-old male who had a right-sided craniotomy for clipping of the right MC aneurysm. You see the SSCP responses at the baseline is completely normal, both median and tibial. And MEP response at all are pretty terrific. On the left side is the right side. EEG was continuous and symmetric. After the surgeon put a temporary clip, we saw that is that attenuation of the activity from the left median. All other SSCP responses are good. MEP responses are all normal. And there was very minimal burst suppression on EEG. Surgeon was informed and surgeon took out the temporary clip. Consequently, it's immediate improvement of the left median SSCP response. But after putting a permanent clip, there is definitely attenuation to almost absence of the left tibial response. EEG normal, MEP rate stayed normal. This shows the PTN changes on the left side, this being baseline. There is a definitely progressive rapid decline to flat record. And again, after the surgeon removed the permanent clip and replaced in a proper position, there is a recovery of the activity. It took about 10 minutes. So after the surgeon changed the permanent clip, that clip was apparently clipping another arterial branch. And all the responses came back to the baseline, including SCCP, MEP, and EEG. There was no neurodeficit postoperatively. What happened here, this being a left MCA aneurysm, and initially first clamp, they clamped this MCA, and thereby we have got changes in the upper extremity supplied by the MCA. Now, second, to permanent clip, they probably clipped also the anterior communicating artery, which might be a major component of anterior cerebral artery, which supplies the lower limb. That's why we lost PTN response. But that there was a complete recovery after those factors are taken into consideration. So every data change in the IOM is very important and has to have some explanation. Case 4 shows that, again, we did a study for posterior lumbar interbody fusion at L3-4 level in a 56-year-old male. And here we find that the SSCP for the ulnar and the PTNs are perfectly normal. MEP was perfect at the baseline, the green ones. But after the surgeon put an implant, we see the loss of activity from left TA, left gastrocnemius, whereas the AH and upper limb activity was completely normal, no EMG change. Surgeon was told about the changes, but he didn't bother to remove the implant. He said it is fine. And then we see at the end, before the closure, those changes, abnormalities in the left TA and left gastroc persisted. And also we saw some activity from the left TA on EMG. And as expected, following postoperative recovery, we found definite left ankle dorsiflexor weakness. Basically here, the surgeon didn't listen to us, and there is a consequence consequently. To trust your neurophysiologist is the lesson. So now coming back to the pitfalls of IOM, none of the procedures are without any problems. It definitely prolongs the time of surgery. The cost is also sometimes prohibitive. Sometimes the communication fails, false alarm, use a paralytic without notifying us, then nerve or root block without letting us know. If there is severe myelopathy, a polyneuropathy, with no real data on the baseline, sometimes the site may not be accessible. Noise from the bed connections or other equipments, cardiac pacemaker or implants, use of some of the navigations like cranial surgery, axiom, they affect our data capture. If there is severe diabetes, systemic illness, or morbidly obese patients, it is very challenging to record. Stretching of the limbs or pressure sometimes cause changes. Use of retractors are also very important to know. Tongue bite or other injury during the MEP stimulation, seizures in predisposed individuals, also after discharge or seizure following the direct cortical stimulation. And case 5 exemplifies one of the pitfalls where we did SCP, MEP, and pre-run MG and TOF for spinal cord stimulator placement in a 35-year-old male with lumbar radiculopathy with chronic pain. So at baseline, we got pretty good SSCP and also MEP responses on both sides, and EMG was quiet. For reasons unknown, where suddenly during the record, we lost SSCP activities, more on this side, right side than the left, diffusely, but MEP was still preserved. The technician changed the port from MEP to SCP, and with that, SCP showed improvement, but MEP responses are all gone. Basically, this created a lot of confusion. Surgeon was mad, and then on wake-up test, patient had no neurodeficit. Basically, all the fault lies with the technical team, that is our IOM team. So this case tells that no monitoring is sometimes better than poor monitoring. One more case example, a 7-year-old boy who had hemangioma decompression and fusion earlier, now with the new onset symptoms. And this shows the hemangioma, the spinal hemangioma, and causing compressive myelopathy. And we saw median responses are terrific, but there was no PTN responses. Similarly, none other lower limb sensory responses are like really obtainable. And then we thought maybe after the decompression is done, we may get the responses, but unfortunately, it didn't show up. This case also exemplifies that this monitoring was not really worth because we did not have a real monitorable data which can show changes. So proper baseline is the base for IOM. That's the lesson from this case. Finally, to conclude, intraoperative monitoring in properly selected cases, in great hands, under good eyes, in electrically compliant OR, is a great tool in prevention, early detection, and reversal of neurological complications. And also very important to have a freely communicating and trusting team of surgical neurophysiologists, reading neurophysician, surgeon, anesthesiologist, and circulation OT nurse. Thank you very much. I am ready to take any questions.